Now, before we can get started with our pattern making, we first want to make sure we get a series of measurements. I'm going to be using this dress form, size 8, to get my measurements in order for me to create a pattern. So there's certain measurements that we need to get in order to create a base for some of the measurements we're going to use to create our pattern. First, we're going to need a good chest measurement. So here you're going to see that I have my tape measurer, 60 inch. I'm going to first make sure I get around the full bust, taking my tape measure all the way around, making sure it's nice and even, and getting my first measurement. So this model has a 34 bust, and if you can see, I'm making sure that the measuring tape sits right on the bust. It's not going above, it's not going beneath. It's going right on the bust. So this will sit right across your apex, or what we call your nipples. The next measurement would be the chest measurement. So this is a little bit above the bust. And this is what we would get for the chest measurement. Okay. Our next measurement would be the waist. Now for an actual person, the waist usually sits up a bit higher. If you can look in the examples that I have from the sewing book, you'll see that the waist sits up a little bit higher. But on the mannequins, the waist sits about here. So they're created a little bit more symmetrical than the normal human body. So you gotta be very careful when you're getting those measurements. A lot of people think that the human waist sits here, but our waist actually sits closer to up here. Then we will go down and get our hip measurement. So you make sure that you're right at the line. So this is where the rump sits. So you want to get that curve right there in your measurement. Like I said, it's not too far above, not too far below. Anything that's not right here, right across the rump line, I like to say, it's not an accurate measurement, and you're going to have measurements that are off if you go too far above or as it goes too far below. Okay, next, depending on what kind of garment you're making, like if you're making something that has a high collar, a mandarin collar, those things are going to determine what other measurements you need for your dress form. So for example, you may need a neck measurement, shoulder measurement. You want to get a back measurement, and we're not going all the way up here just yet. We're going to start right at the nape of the neck, and then we're just going to go down right to the waistline. You can also do a back measurement. And if you're doing the length of a dress, you want to make sure that you get the measurement you want for the length. It's a little bit different for pants. For pants, you're going to want to get the inseam and the outside seam. You're also going to want to have the individual sit down to get the crotch depth. And that's something we would use moreover if we were creating pants. But for skirts or dresses, you don't need those seams, but you do need to measure from the waist down to determine about how long you want that skirt to be. So if you want it to be a straight to the floor skirt, you can determine that. If you just want it to stop right here, so you're going to use this waist measurement to determine how long you want the skirt. So those are just the basic measurements you would use, especially when creating a skirt. If you have a mannequin, you can practice on a mannequin. If you're not able to use a mannequin, you want to try for yourself, you can do some of the measurements on your own, but there's a couple of ones that would get tricky. Obviously, anything that has to do with the back length, if you're talking about the skirt length, you're going to need someone else, because you bending and trying to get the measurements are going to make them impossible to be accurate. So you might want to have someone else do those measurements. So you can definitely use this guide and some of the PDFs that I have attached to be measurement guides for yourself. But again, if you're going to have your own creation done, I would recommend getting a dress form or going to a professional tailor and having them do measurements for you, because it's nearly impossible to do your own measurements. But this is just how you get some measurements done, and this is just the basic way that measurements are done for you to create your pattern. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe. Videos are uploaded weekly covering dressmaking, fashion, lectures, and more.